The year was 2248, and the Earth had never been quieter. The wars had ended. The skies were clean again, and the oceans finally shone blue instead of gray. Humanity was ready to take its next great step, to reach another star. The ship that would make it possible was called the Odyssey, a massive silver vessel orbiting high above the planet. It was the first interstellar craft ever built, a dream of scientists, engineers, and visionaries who wanted humanity to explore beyond its cradle. At the heart of that dream stood Captain Adrian Vale. Adrian was tall, calm, and patient, the kind of man who carried hope like armor. He had flown through asteroid belts, led rescue missions on frozen moons, and seen the light of 100 worlds. But even after all that, this mission felt different. This time he was not just carrying the future of mankind. He was also leaving behind the one person he loved most, Dr. Alara Quinn. Alara was not a soldier or a pilot. She was a scientist, brilliant, determined, and endlessly curious. Her life revolved around the stars, but her heart revolved around him. Together they had mapped galaxies and dreamed of worlds beyond the sun. Yet every night when the stars blinked into view, she found herself thinking the same thing. Do we really have to go so far to find something beautiful? On the morning of the launch, the world gathered to watch the Odyssey rise. Billions tuned into the broadcast. The ship floated above the Atlantic spaceport, its engines humming softly, reflecting the sunrise. Inside the control center, Alara stood behind the glass wall, watching Adrian prepare for departure. He looked calm, too calm, but she knew the weight he carried. "Captain Vale," said a technician beside her. "Systems are green across the board. Launch window in 15 minutes. Alara swallowed hard and stepped closer to the comms panel. "Patch me through," she said. The screen flickered and Adrian's face appeared, clear and close, his helmet resting beside him. His smile was soft but tired. "Alara," he said, "I was hoping you'd call before we left." She took a slow breath. "I had to. I can't let you go without saying it again." He chuckled. "Let me guess, don't get yourself killed?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "Don't get lost." He leaned back in his chair. Around him, the crew moved about, performing last checks. "Lost? I've got the best navigator in the galaxy." "I'm serious, Adrian," she said quietly. "The Erebus system is 32 light years away. If anything goes wrong out there, we won't even know for years." He nodded, understanding the fear in her voice. "We'll make it, Alara. You know how much this mission means. Humanity needs to know what's beyond." Her eyes softened. "And what about what's right here?" He looked away, down at his gloved hands. For a moment, the confident captain was gone, and only the man remained. The one who used to fall asleep beside her under projection domes full of stars. "Alara," he said finally, "you've always known what drives me. I can't explain it in this pull, this need to go out there. Maybe it's foolish. Maybe it's human nature. But if I can make it back, I will." She blinked back tears. "You promised me the stars, Adrian." He smiled faintly. "And I'll bring them to you." She shook her head, her voice trembling now. "I don't want the stars. I just want you to stay." For a heartbeat, silence filled the line. Then he said softly, "I know." The announcement echoed through the control room. "All personnel prepare for launch. T-minus 10 minutes, the moment was slipping away." Alara pressed her hand against the glass as if the gesture could bridge the distance between them. "Come home," she whispered. "I will," he said. "I swear it." Then the screen went dark. From the observation deck, Alara watched as the Odyssey began its final countdown. The ship glowed against the rising sun. The sound of its engines was a low, steady rumble that grew into thunder. As it lifted from the platform, the entire sky seemed to burn with light. The people around her cheered. Reporters cried. Children waved flags. Humanity's future had finally left the Earth, but Alara didn't cheer. She stood still, hands clasped tightly together, watching the trail of fire fade into the clouds. She knew that, somewhere inside that metal giant, Adrian was looking back at the same blue planet, thinking of her. Hours later, when the ship reached orbit, Adrian sat alone in his cabin, staring through the viewport. Earth hung below, small and perfect, wrapped in white clouds and deep oceans. He tapped the side of a small recorder. "Mission log, Captain Vale," he began, but then paused. He smiled sadly and changed his tone. "No, not a log. Just a message." He leaned closer. Alara, if you're hearing this, it means we're already past lunar orbit. Everything's running fine. The crew's excited. I'm trying to be, but the truth is I keep thinking about what you said. You only wanted me to stay. He exhaled slowly, eyes distant. You know, when I was a kid, I thought space was cold and empty. But now that I'm here, it feels alive. I wish you could see it. The stars look different up close, sharper, brighter. Like they're watching us, he smiled faintly. I'll keep recording these messages whenever I can. Maybe when I'm back, we'll listen to them together. You'll laugh at how nervous I sound. Outside, the stars glimmered silently. He turned off the recorder and looked out again. I'll bring you the stars, Alara, he whispered to the void. I promise. Back on Earth, Alara sat alone in her apartment, the city lights glowing beneath her window. The launch had replayed on every news channel for hours. The world was celebrating, she wasn't. Her computer beeped in a personal transmission. She opened it, and Adrian's recorded message filled the screen. His voice was soft, his words hesitant but full of warmth. When it ended, she sat there for a long time, staring at the dark screen. Then she looked up at the night sky outside her window. The stars seemed endless, unreachable. Come home, she whispered again. 2 days later, the Odyssey left the solar system. The engines flared once, then vanished into the black sea of space. The mission had begun. In the quiet of the control center, Alara watched the telemetry feed, a set of blinking lights and numbers. To everyone else, it was data. To her, it was heartbeat. She stayed long after her shift ended, eyes fixed on the steady pulse of the ship's signal. Adrian was out there, 30 million kilometers away, drifting farther every second. She could almost hear his voice through the static, like a faint echo across the stars. Don't get lost, she thought again, and somewhere in the deep, silent dark, Adrian Vale whispered back to the empty universe, I'll find my way home. On Earth, people still spoke of the ship like a legend, a brave mission carrying humanity's hopes beyond the stars. News networks played the same few transmissions again and again. The smiling faces of the crew, the image of the ship vanishing into the black. But after the first 2 years, the signals had stopped coming. The world had moved on. The Odyssey was declared lost in deep space. Everyone accepted it. Everyone except Dr. Alara Quinn. She still worked at the Space Research Institute, even though most of her colleagues had been reassigned to new projects. Her office was a quiet corner full of old star charts, humming computers, and one screen that never turned off, the one connected to the long-range deep space array. Every night, Alara sat there with her cup of cold coffee, listening to static. The rest of the world had let go of Adrian Vale. She refused to. Sometimes, she played his old messages just to hear his voice again. You know, Alara, one message said, his voice half laughing. The crew says I talk about you too much, but they don't understand. You're the reason I'm out here. Every time I look at a new star, I imagine you're watching it too. Another ended with him whispering, when I come home, we'll go to the coast. Just you and me. No stars, no missions. Just us. Each message reminded her of what she had lost, and what she couldn't stop hoping for. Then, one cold night, as she adjusted the signal filters for the 1,000th time, something changed. The static shifted. A faint pattern appeared and a pulse, slow and broken but repeating. Her heart started pounding. She zoomed in, isolating the signal. It wasn't random noise. It had rhythm, structure. A voice tried to push through the distortion. Words weak but human. Wara, if you're hearing this. I found it, Alara froze. Her hands shook as she adjusted the frequency again. The world we dreamed of. It's beautiful. And then silence. She held her breath, waiting. The transmission cracked once more before vanishing completely. She sat there staring at the empty monitor, her pulse racing. Adrian, she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. You're alive. For the next 3 weeks, Alara worked without rest. She recorded the transmission, analyzed the timing, the echo delay, the frequency drift. Every detail pointed to one truth. The signal had traveled 32 light years before reaching Earth. It came from the Erebus system. Her colleagues dismissed it immediately. It's a ghost signal, one of them said. Probably an echo from the first mission. There's no way anyone survived this long out there. But Alara refused to listen. The signal is fresh, she insisted. The carrier pattern matches the Odyssey's communication system. He's out there, and he's sending coordinates. The debate went on for days. The board refused to approve any rescue attempt. Too risky, too expensive, too uncertain. Finally, Alara made her choice. If no one else would go, she would. In secret, she began preparing. The Institute had been developing a prototype jump ship designed for single-pilot travel through subspace. It was small, dangerous, and untested, but it was her only chance. She spent every night in the hangar checking its systems, loading coordinates from Adrian's transmission. Her hands trembled as she set the destination, Erebus 4. On the night before launch, she stood under the open dome of the observatory, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, 32 light-years away, was the man she loved and waiting, or maybe dying, among alien skies. "Wait for me," she whispered. "I'm coming." The next morning, she activated the ship's engines. The jump sequence began, and the space around her folded into a tunnel of light. The ship shook violently, and alarm screamed, but she held steady. The stars stretched into bright lines. Then everything went white. When she woke, it was quiet. The stars outside the window were unfamiliar, colder, sharper. She had arrived. Her ship's scanners confirmed it. Erebus system, orbiting a dying red star. Alara exhaled in disbelief. She had made it. Before her floated a massive, dark planet. Its surface was cracked and scorched, with streaks of red light pulsing beneath the crust like veins of fire. Around it, fragments of shattered moons drifted like broken glass. And then, her radar pinged. A metallic shape appeared in orbit, barely visible against the black. It was the Odyssey. Alara's throat tightened as she brought the jump ship closer. The once proud vessel was scarred and silent, covered in dust and debris. "Odyssey, this is Dr. Alara Quinn of Earth Command," she said, voice shaking. "If anyone can hear me, please respond." No answer. Only static. She guided her craft toward the docking bay. The old system still recognized her clearance code. The doors opened slowly, groaning in protest. Inside, everything was frozen in silence. She floated through the corridors, flashlight cutting through the dark. Personal items drifted weightlessly. A pen, a photograph, a floating coffee mug sealed in time. Then she found the cryo chamber. The crew were still inside, alive, but asleep. The status lights blinked faintly, showing stable life signs. Alara gasped, pressing her hand against the glass. "Oh my God. Adrian, what did you do?" She moved through the ship until she reached the command deck. The captain's chair was empty, but there on the console was a small data drive, glowing faintly blue. She picked it up and slid it into her wrist device. The screen came alive with his voice. "Alara, if you're hearing this, then somehow you found your way here." His voice was weaker, slower, but unmistakably his. "We reached Erebus 4 3 years ago. The planet was beautiful, oceans, clouds, everything we hoped for. But the readings were wrong. The air wasn't stable. The magnetic storms, they tore the ship's systems apart. We tried to leave, but the reactor was failing." He paused, coughing. "I put the crew into cryosleep to protect them. Someone had to stay awake to stabilize the power core. That someone was me." Alara covered her mouth, trembling. "I kept the systems running as long as I could. But the planet below, it's strange. There's energy here, not like anything we've seen. The storms are alive somehow, almost aware. I think they're what destroyed this world long ago." Static filled the message for a few seconds. Then his voice returned, softer now. "If I can't make it back, I just want you to know, you were right. The stars are beautiful, but they're not home. You are." The message ended. Alara stood there in silence, the hum of the dying ship surrounding her. Outside the window, the ruined planet turned slowly, glowing with red lightning. She wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. "I'm here now," she said softly. "I'll bring them all home." She turned to the control console and began working. The systems were failing fast, but there was still hope. If she could repair the reactor, she could wake the crew and plot a course back to Earth. The stars outside flickered, and for a moment, she felt something watching her, as if the universe itself was aware of her presence. She whispered into the dark, "Hold on, Adrian." Just a little longer, and somewhere deep within the ship, the faintest echo of his voice played again. a fragment of the recording that never stopped looping. Home isn't out there, Alara. It's wherever you are. The red light of Erebus IV bathed the Odyssey in an eerie glow. The planet below was scarred and lifeless, yet it pulsed with strange energy. Alara floated through the silent corridors of the ship, data drive in hand, her heart pounding. The cryo chambers still held the crew, frozen in time. Their faces were peaceful, unaware of the danger lurking outside. Adrian's message had made one thing clear. He had stayed behind to protect them. And now it was up to her to finish what he had begun. She activated the ship's diagnostic panels. Systems were failing everywhere. The main reactor was unstable, the life support systems flickered, and the navigation console refused to boot properly. Every action she took set off alarms, but she worked quickly, methodically, trusting her training and her determination to save the people she loved. "Come on," she muttered, tapping a series of commands into the console. Sparks flew from a damaged panel. The ship groaned, shifting slightly in orbit around the glowing planet. "We can do this. We have to." The data drive contained Adrian's logs, step-by-step instructions for stabilizing the reactor. She followed them carefully, adjusting the power flow, rerouting energy through the auxiliary cores, and balancing the flux between systems. Each adjustment brought the reactor closer to stability. Each successful test sent a wave of relief through her. But even as she worked, she could not ignore the truth Adrian had left behind. The planet below was dangerous. Its strange energy pulses were still active, feeding on the reactor's emissions. One wrong move and the ship could be torn apart. Hours passed and the small jump ship she had arrived in rested tethered to the Odyssey. She floated between the two, moving supplies and tools. Her hands were sore, her eyes strained, but she refused to stop. Finally, the main reactor stabilizer beeped, a steady, rhythmic tone. It meant life. It meant hope. Alara exhaled, relief washing over her. "Okay," she whispered. "Time to wake them up." She moved to the first cryo chamber and initiated the revival sequence. The chamber hissed, mist rising as the first crew member awoke. Confused eyes blinked at her. One by one, she revived the rest of the crew, each greeting her with stunned gratitude. They didn't ask questions yet. They simply trusted her, the woman who had come across light years of darkness to bring them home. Then she reached the captain's quarters, and the empty chair reminded her again of Adrian. He had stayed behind, alone, holding the ship together while the planet raged below. She tapped into the recording logs once more. His final message played. "Alara, you were right. The stars are beautiful, but they are not home. Home is wherever you are. Take care of them for me, please." Alara pressed her hands to the console, tears streaming down her face. "I will," she whispered. "I promise." The crew rallied under her guidance. Together they repaired the navigation systems, charted a safe course, and calculated a jump back to Earth. Alara worked tirelessly, adjusting trajectories, recalculating subspace coordinates, and monitoring the reactor. The Odyssey groaned but held together, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. As the final preparations were complete, Alara floated to the viewport, looking down at the planet one last time. It glowed red and angry, but it was beautiful in its own way, a reminder of the fragile nature of life in the universe. "I wish you could see this, Adrian," she whispered. "I wish you were here." Somehow, in that moment, she felt a warmth, almost like a presence. The air seemed lighter, the energy less harsh. It was as if the planet itself was acknowledging her determination. She initiated the jump sequence. The engines flared, the Odyssey quaked, and space folded around them. Stars stretched into streaks of light, then faded into the endless darkness. For a moment, everything was still. Then Earth appeared on the horizon, a shining blue orb hanging against the black void. Tears streamed down Alara's face as the crew cheered quietly. They had survived. They had returned, but even in the joy, she felt the absence of one person most of all. Adrian had stayed behind. The knowledge of his sacrifice pressed on her heart. The journey back to Earth took weeks. During that time, the crew shared stories, laughed at memories, and worked together to repair the ship further. Alara recorded every detail in her logs, making sure Adrian's bravery and humanity were remembered. At night, she sat alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. Each one reminded her of him, the man who had promised the stars but loved her more. She whispered into the dark, "I'll bring them home, Adrian, just like you wanted. But I'll bring you too, in memory, in spirit, and in everything we've done." When the Odyssey finally re-entered Earth's orbit, it was greeted by a silent, awed world. The news had spread. A signal from deep space had been traced to the Erebus system. Humanity waited, holding its breath as the ship came closer. Alara piloted the vessel into the spaceport, the crew guiding her from the consoles. The engines shut down. Silence filled the chamber. Then slowly she opened the hatch. The crew stepped out one by one, blinking at the sunlight and fresh air, laughing quietly, hugging each other. Humanity had returned, and alive, whole, and stronger than ever. Alara stepped last, holding the data drive tightly. She looked at the crowd, at the scientists, at the cheering spectators, and then she looked up at the sky. The stars were still out there, shining bright and far, but she understood now what Adrian had meant. The stars were beautiful, but they were not home. Home was here, with people, with love, with courage, and with hope. That evening, Alara returned to the observation deck of the spaceport. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She held the data drive to her chest. "I wish you were here, Adrian," she said softly. "But I know you are, somewhere. In the stars, in the light, in the choice to keep going. You promised me the stars, but you gave me something better. Hope. And I'll carry that forever." As the first stars appeared in the evening sky, she smiled through her tears. Humanity had reached beyond its limits, had faced the silence between stars, and had survived. And in doing so, she had kept the promise to him, to the crew, and to the spirit of every human who dared to look upward. The stars shone brightly, and for a moment it felt as if Adrian was smiling back. Home was not a place. Home was love, and in that love the light never faded.